One of my probably former subscribers now, he probably unsubscribed, he told me some information on Floyd Mayweather. Particularly, I was talking about the post-prime Floyd Mayweather and how he was able to beat young, strong champions and people much younger than him in his post-prime, between the ages of 35 and 38, whereas other greats were not able to do so. And he was telling me I was hating on the former greats in my generation and stuff like that. And he went on to say boxing is dead. Okay, let's see if that's true. Upcoming fights. We've got Canelo versus Dimitri Bivol. I mean, we're spoiled in this generation. We're spoiled. We're getting all the big fights. And then people say, well, Canelo's not facing Charlo. He's not facing David Benavidez. Dimitri Bivol? Are you guys serious? Do you guys understand Dimitri Bivol is... people were critiquing Canelo saying, oh, he's only facing a whole bunch of old guys. He was always on... Then Canelo went on a non-stop streak, okay? He faced Callum Smith, prime fighter, lineal champion. Then he faced Billy Joe Saunders, prime fighter, southpaw, slick, skilled. Then he faced Caleb Plant, who everybody thought he was never going to face Caleb Plant. And he faced Caleb Plant. Got all the time in the world to train, just like Billy Joe. Callum Smith got it on sort of 4 weeks' notice, but Callum Smith was always in the running, so he should have been preparing himself. But anyways, faces Callum Smith, prime, not Callum Smith, sorry, Caleb Plant, prime fighter, okay, confident, beat him. Now he's jumping up to 175 once again, but instead of facing what you guys call, quote unquote, a old, washed up fighter like Sergey Kovalev, so-called washed up fighter. I'm not going to disregard that Sergey came off of a very tough fight. And within a short turnaround time, of 8 weeks, he had to face Canelo, and he didn't get the recuperation rest he needed, but still, he boxed very, very well. Surprised me. But even so, you guys talk about how Canelo, he only beats great old fighters. Now, first of all, we're going to go into this in detail, because a lot of you guys don't got no merit behind what you say. I'm not going to disagree with you on certain points. Jamal Charlo was his mandatory. He should have faced Jamal Charlo because it was his mandatory. All right? The WBC made this belt called the franchise belt, which I think is a waste of damn time, and gave him a way out so that he faced Sergey Kovalev. In addition, Canelo could have also faced Demetrius Andrade at 160 and was going to. He said he was going to unify all the belts, the WBO, and then all of a sudden there was this big hesitation. I do not know if it was Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy that was doing it, but I suspect it wasn't. I suspect the promoter would have wanted Canelo to be undisputed and get the WBO title. But a lot of hoopla happened, and he lost instead the IBF title. Okay, because he did not defend it in time against his mandatory. They were trying to do negotiations at the last minute. He had one more belt to get, and he would have been undisputed at 160. Right? So I'm not going to disagree with anyone who says Canelo avoided and is still avoiding Demetrius Andrade. Okay? But let me say this. If he ends up facing Demetrius Andrade down the road, okay? If he ends up facing Demetrius Andrade down the road, it's going to be a better Demetrius Andrade, I believe, than the Demetrius Andrade. Now, In other words, Demetrius Andrews is not going to get any. He's not going to get worse. He's going to get better because Demetrius Andrews' prime is not just dependent on his athleticism. Okay, I'm sorry, not his prime. Sorry, Demetrius Andrews is not just dependent on his athleticism. So even if he is out of his prime a bit, which I think he's 33, going on 34 very soon, just like Terrence Crawford. These are fighters that come from the cloth of Bernard Hopkins and Floyd Mayweather and Mike McCallum and James Toney. They come from that ilk where they're defensive fighters. So because they stay behind their defense, they can fight as long as they want to. Okay? And once Demetrius Andrade makes certain adjustments to his style, really, as he gets more experience, he's only like fine wine going to get better. Now, having said that, Demetrius Andrade has moved up to 168, and hopefully after he secures a title there, he will look to face David Benavidez. So this is the hope, and that will be a nice test for Demetrius Andrade, and I do believe he will pass it with flying colors. I think he beats David Benavidez. I love David Benavidez. He's a very good. He'll take on all comers. He'll test his skills against the best. I just think that Demetrius Andrade has too much in his skill tank for David Benavidez to beat him down and actually stop him. I just don't see that happening. We're talking about a defensive fighter, and that's the only way David Benavidez is going to beat Demetrius Andrade. He's not going to beat him any other way. He has to stop him to beat him, and he's not going to stop him. So I think Demetrius Andrade will beat him. But having said that, anything's possible in boxing. And David Benavidez, just like Demetrius Andrade, is getting better with time. You know, David Benavidez is getting sharper with his jab. He has better defense. I'm seeing him picking off shots much better. His mid-range game is getting better. His inside game is not that great, but he's starting to work on his inside game. So, and he always threw combinations, both mid-range and outside, not so much on the inside. So it would be interesting to see David Benavidez pushed and tested, you know, in a fight where he has to sometimes go get Demetrius Andrade. Sometimes Demetrius Andrade is on him. He fought a fighter who was game, his most recent fight, and that fight was slippery and game and everything. And this was, I think the fighter came in at a moment's notice. So David Benavidez, he's still learning as a fighter. He's very young, and with the attributes and skills he has, if he develops those skills and he really hones in, particularly on his inside fighting skills and on his defense. So there are two things I think, from my observation, I can only speak from watching from the outside, David Benavidez will have to work on his inside game and also his defense. You know, he picks off shots pretty well, but he still gets caught flush, and he walks into shots quite still. Even though he has a very good jab and he's working on his jab, the jab is, you can't just have, against Canelo, you can't just have a jab. I mean, you're too flat-footed. I'm not saying he's a flat-footed fighter. Of course, he's walking down guys, so he's going to be, I see he has a bit of agility, but he's still too flat-footed for Canelo. Canelo's quite an agile fighter, and as much as Canelo doesn't have the sort of marathon-like quick feet to move around the ring all the time like that. He is quick, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying he's not constantly on the move with quick feet and pivot work. He more uses angles, try to cut angles to get to you. Even so, I think Canelo's quicker than David Benavidez, strangely enough. Benavidez has very quick hands, but his feet are not very quick. And that's going to be tremendous demise to him. I mean, Canelo's just going to be cutting all kinds of angles on him, tagging him up all kinds of different ways. And he'll be like a punching bag to Canelo. And you don't really want to be that. Triple G was a punching bag to Canelo. And Triple G, I think, movement is a little bit more tricky, slippery than David Benavidez. So, like I said before, the weakest link, you know, out of all the guys, you know, Caleb Plant was a better fighter than David. I know it sounds weird because it's much more of a challenge to Canelo than David Benavidez would be. He's tough and everything, can take a punch, but you'll be a punching bag. And Canelo showed you that if you keep coming like Triple G, you're just going to get tagged up more. You know, and Canelo's cardio is improving over time, and he's becoming more efficient in how he punches and throws things, and he's even more efficient at backing up bigger guys. So, you know, everybody's talking about David Benavidez, but I think he still has a lot of growth. to reach to the Canelo level. And I think, but I do think whenever he does face Canelo, he'll be ready for Canelo, and he has a lot of potential. But I think guys like Demetrius Andrade and Canelo Alvarez, they would beat David Benavidez. However, Jamal Charlo doesn't show me the confidence. Now, like Billy Joe Saunders, I thought Billy Joe Saunders always had, and he does actually have, the tools to beat a Canelo. He just didn't have the confidence. And I don't get that Jamal Charlo has the confidence to beat a David Benavidez. Just kind of throwing stuff out there. But I don't get that he has the confidence to beat a David Benavidez. I think David Benavidez, Charlo's a guy who's very sharp, very explosive. I think that would be a good fight, but I think David's just too big for him. I think Jamal does have the defense and everything, but he still gets hit. And a guy like David Benavidez, see, Jamal Charlo's he's not so much of a finesse guy. He is a finesse guy, but he's not so much of a finesse guy. He kind of tries to overpower his opponents. And against David Benavidez, that's just a bad idea. You have to walk him into traps. You have to bait him into different moves, and you have to catch him off guard with different things. You have to be a smart fighter in there. You can't just go toe-to-toe with this dude. And if Charlo tries to do, counter-punch him and go toe-to-toe, and Charlo's not really a combinational puncher, force for force, I think David Benavidez will overcome him, and probably, I don't think he'd stop Charlo. Charlo's very, very strong and tough, but he would beat him up. I think Charlo would get beat up pretty bad, and I think he'd lose the fight. We've seen with Matt Korobov, when Korobov is answering him, it's about strength for strength, and Charlo's more of a strength for strength kind of guy. He's kind of a front door kind of kick the front door down kind of guy. You have to do your homework on fighters. You have to do your homework on fighters. And Charlo is a jabber just like David Benavidez. So it'd be two guys with similar styles. And, So of all of them, Charlo's, I just think he's a little too small for David Benavidez. I think David Benavidez, and Charlo knows that's going to be a tough fight for him. Because he mostly fights guys, I think he still fights guys trying to go toe-to-toe with them. And I don't think that's a good idea. You have to be... Terrence Crawford's a very subtle guy. He go toe-to-toe with you, but he's subtly learning you and learning traps, and he's a smart fighter. Demetrius Andrade's the same thing. He's not going to just try and kick down the door. He's trying to assess you, see what you have in store. David Benavidez even, to some degree. He's a smart fighter as well. He's trying to assess the fighter, and then he goes into his routines as to how he's going to break down the fighter and put pressure on him. So you have to assess fighters. You have to, go out there and see what they have to bring to the table, and then you use your skill sets. I think all top tier fighters do that, but I'm just saying, it's not just implementing a certain regiment or a certain set of things you learn in the gym. It must go beyond that. And guys like Demetrius Andrade, Canelo Alvarez, they bring a lot of stuff to the table. Okay, but having said that, I'm coming back to Canelo versus Bivol. Bivol is a very smart fighter himself. This is just a hell of a fight. If you ask me, Canelo versus Andrade, Canelo versus Charlo, Canelo versus Benavidez, and then Canelo versus Bivol, which would be Canelo's toughest fight? I think Canelo's toughest fight is Bivol. You remember I said to you guys that Canelo versus Caleb Plant was a tough fight? And I believe also Blue Blood Sports TV agreed with me. If Canelo beat Caleb Plant, the sky's the limit. I'm telling you right now, Caleb Plant is a tough task for anybody. And I thought Caleb was in the fight. As much as Canelo was stiff-arming him and hitting him with those rights to the body, I don't think those were the things that, they would be wearing down Caleb Plant. I think the body shot that Canelo, when Caleb Plant opened up and decided to trade with him on the inside, and Canelo hit him with a body shot just before the round ended, and Caleb backed off, I think that was still resonating in Caleb's mind. And then Canelo came in with a leaping left hook, sort of almost straight jab like left hook, leaping left hook, caught Caleb. Caleb dipped to one side. He rocked back to one side and he dipped down, and Canelo caught him with an uppercut and really stunned him. I think what happened afterwards is what caused Caleb Plant's demise. I'm going to say that over and over again. He did not do the right thing. He staggered around, and then he got up very quickly. So he was still spinning. His head's still spinning, right? He didn't give himself time. He didn't keep his composure and give himself time to recoup. You should have taken a knee, and if you're spinning, you stay down, you listen for the eighth or ninth count, and then you stand up very carefully. All right? And you jump around. You bounce around. The referee will want to get your gloves, so you bounce around a little bit. To buy time. See, this is a veteran move. When you get back up, the referee's going to try and come to you and grab the gloves. No, you get back up and you jump, you bounce around, and then the referee will come and grab your gloves. Then you nod to him. Now, even if you're spinning and you're still seeing stars, of course, clinching is. Shout out to Boxing Learner. Shout out to Boxing Learner. Apparently my phone is slowing down once you did that. Shout out to Boxing Learner. Yes, it's a false narrative, and we're going into detail on some of the things. You know, the fans sometimes are misinformed about matchups. Boxing Learner, shout out to Boxing Learner in the building. And one of the things they're misinformed about is because you see a fighter a certain way, you say, well, Bivol a cherry pick for Canelo. This is, I'm going to say this again. Bivol is in no way a cherry pick for Canelo. Okay? If you ask me, Caleb Plant was a very tough fight for Canelo, and Canelo will tell you that. He was frustrated because he wasn't really landing anything on Caleb. He was landing that right hand to Caleb's solar plexus, but it's an arm punch because he can't really get the leverage into his punch. It was an arm punch. So while he was stiff arming him, he was arm punching him there. It wasn't a full. He couldn't get his full body weight behind the punch. You understand? So Caleb Plant wasn't affected as much. Of course, every punch you get affected by, but he wasn't affected as much by the stiff arm punch that Canelo was trying to do to him as that body punch at the end of round 10. Now, the accumulation of punishment. But he wasn't really landing anything on Caleb Plant. You see Caleb Plant's face was smooth. You know, his body was pretty much fine. Oh, wow. Every time you actually make a comment, Boxing Learner, this program goes straight to YouTube. I don't know why. Yeah, Canelo struggled with Caleb. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Now, for some reason, this is happening. I'm gonna try and go right back here. I don't know why I'm watching my own stream right now. Try to use the. If not, I'll just go to straight stream. Okay. But I want to show you guys these pictures. Anywho, so Bivol, y'all, is a step up. Bivol's a step up. Now, you know, excuse me. I'm gonna take the my face off the screen for a second, okay? Bivol is a step up to what Caleb Plant is. And these are the boxes that give Canelo the most problems, okay? Hold on a second. I'm still talking. I'm just going to have what you need sign on there. But I'm still here with you guys. I'm just going into the kitchen to get something. So, basically, Canelo is facing some of the toughest competition he could possibly face with his style, given his style, you know. So it's really strange to hear people say that he's cherry picking, because Billy Joe Saunders was supposed to give him the business. Billy Joe Saunders was supposed to give him the work. You know what I'm saying? Billy Joe was supposed to do that. And Billy Joe had the capabilities and skills to give Canelo that work. And he showed it in the middle portions of the fight, in round 5 and so on. He started to get confidence and actually started to do something. But it was way too late. Canelo had gone to the body, broken him down. Billy Joe was out of shape. He came down in weight, so he got him out of there. And he broke his eye socket, by the way. But Billy Joe is slowing down, right? I ranked Billy Joe above Caleb Plant. I had Billy Joe and Demetrius Andrade somewhat on the same level. Okay. So in my opinion, the toughest opponent Canelo could possibly face in his career is Demetrius Andrade. That's the guy I think is supposed to give Canelo the most problems. Second to Demetrius Andrade is another Dimitri Bivol. I just think I don't see Canelo winning that fight at all. I'm calling it as it is. He got to work on his footwork. Besides, footwork is not going to win that fight. I just don't see him. I don't see him beating a guy like Bivol. A smart fighter who knows how to use range. Has the experience. Caleb Plant don't have that experience. Dimitri Bivol does. He's been at a higher weight class longer than Canelo. This is a great challenge for Canelo. If you ask me who's the best 175 pounder right now, I know some people will say 38-year-old Arda. Bivol's countryman. I'm going to argue 2 points. One, Bitabayev is strong and he roughhouses you on the inside, but he's very slow. He's now very old. And while he is unified champion, I think Bivol's a much better boxer. If I have Bivol go up against Bitabayev, I'll show you Bivol beat him. That's my true feeling. That's why Bivol was looking to face Bitabayev. Because he knows what to do against a guy like that. So, and Bivol's a small 175 pounder. Okay, what I mean by small, he's not small. I mean, he probably comes in on fight night 180 something, 190 something pounds. What I mean is, he isn't the weights that those guys are. Like 190 or whatever. Because Bitabayev used to be a super heavyweight. So Bitabayev should be a heavyweight, actually. I don't know why he doesn't vacate and go up to cruiser. Because cutting weight, that's what's killing Bitabayev. And in terms of style matchups, I think Bitabayev is just way too slow for Canelo. Canelo picks him apart. Too slow. Bivol is not too slow. And Bivol has good timing. So if you ask me, in this upcoming fight with Canelo versus Bivol, which will happen, let me see what, it's May the 7th. So next month, the 7th of next month, we're having Canelo versus Bivol. That's a hell of a fight, man. Now, the only downside to Canelo versus Demetrius Andrade is Demetrius Andrade hasn't beaten any names in boxing. You know? That's why I try to explain to people. I was even explaining to a dude. I said, sometimes beating a prime fighter is not necessarily the best thing you could do. And a lot of people are looking at me like, what are you talking about? So let me explain myself. I'm eating. You guys don't need to see me eating. That's why I got the what you need sign up. Take Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman. Now, Keith Thurman accomplished quite a lot. He was a unified WBA, WBC champion, right? Beat Manny Garcia, beat Sean Porter, and Robert Guerrero. Gave up one of the titles. Sean got it. And he was the WBA Super Champion when we faced Manny Pacquiao. Incredible accolades. He's in his prime. And he just came off a win of Josecito Lopez. Got the cupboards out for Pacquiao. Keith Thurman, and I try to explain this about value. I keep on talking about value with boxers. Alright? Someone talk. Keith Thurman got beaten by Pacquiao. Close split decision loss, but I thought Pacquiao did enough to win. You know, Keith landed more shots on Pacquiao than anybody ever did. And he outlanded Pacquiao. The reason being, not all shots are created equal, right? Thurman got knocked down by Pacquiao in the first round. And then in the 10th round, Pacquiao visibly hurt Keith Thurman to the body. Perfectly placed live-up shot. A shot Pacquiao and Freddie Roach must have seen from the Louis Collazo fight. Right? And it duplicated it. Now, the thing about it is Pacquiao beat Keith Thurman. Will Keith Thurman go on to be in the Boxing Hall of Fame? We don't know. We have to watch to see how he performs in the remaining fights of his career. It's up in the air. Right? Is Keith Thurman a good fighter? Absolutely. Is he a great fighter? We will find out. Time will tell. However, if you beat a fighter who may not be in their prime, but is at the top, at the very top of boxing, I'll give the example. Canelo versus Koto. Koto was, I believe, 36 years old. But he was the lineal middleweight champion. Beat Sergio Martinez for the middleweight title. Okay? And he defended the title against Daniel Gill. He was at the top of the middleweight division. Said he wasn't a middleweight. Now, follow me here. Yes, Koto was old. Yes, he was past his prime. But the knowledge that he had, the abilities that he had, that he knew how to use, and his smarts, which is what boxing is all about. It's 90% mental, 10% physical. Okay? That's why Bernard Hopkins was able to do what he did. That's why Archie Moore was able to do what he did. That's why Marquez was able to do what he did. You can't say it's all about being in your prime and use that as the primary thing, and why doesn't Canelo face prime fighters? No. if you have an established veteran in the sport of boxing that can teach you something as you're fighting him to up your game, because he's at the peak, he's at the pinnacle in his division. Okay, we're not talking about a washed out fighter. Even then you can learn something, but nonetheless. No, we're not talking about a washed out fighter. We're not talking about a fighter coming off of losses. We're talking about someone who's a champion at the top. That is why you have to be careful when you speak about, well, that fighter wasn't in his prime. You have to be careful, because if you say that, then you're discrediting Wilfredo Benitez's win over Antonio Cervantes. You're discrediting Mike Tyson's win over Michael Spinks. Or over Larry Holmes. Or you're discrediting Evander Holyfield's win over Mike Tyson. Or you're discrediting Thomas the Hitman Hearns' win over Pipino Cuevas. And I can go on and on and on. Sergey Kovalov's win over Bernard Hopkins. Yeah? Rocky Marciano's win over Archie Moore. Archie Moore went on to be an undefeated, continue to be an undefeated light heavyweight champion. He just wasn't a heavyweight. He wasn't one of the top heavyweights. All right? Because Floyd Patterson beat him. So if you were to talk about Rocky Marciano beating Archie Moore, because he really was, even though he was ranked as a top heavyweight, he really wasn't a top heavyweight. Archie Moore even won the California's version of the heavyweight championship of the world over Nino Valdez. All right? So, I mean, when you really look at the history of these things, and you can't just say, because you can't really say, I mean, Nino Valdez wasn't a heavyweight, okay? He was a light heavyweight as well. But the point is, you can't just blanketly say certain things that you say. A lot of fight fans, they just blanketly say stupid stuff. And why I say it's stupid stuff, and I call some of them chumps, is because, first of all, you never threw a punch in your life, but you know everything about boxing without ever studying it, without ever doing homework on it, without ever finding out about its history. And even when you do that, do understand, because you never threw a punch in your life, that you will not understand how difficult it is for all of these accomplishments to be executed. Because then you would have some reverence, then you would have some respect. So when I hear people say, boxing is dying today, no, that's fanboy nonsense talk. That's not somebody who's in the sport of boxing today. And of course the sport changes. All sports change. That's called evolution. It can change for the better or the worse, but ultimately in the end, it balances off. Anyone with a somewhat good knowledge of boxing, you don't even have to be, you may not know anything about boxing, but just by observing the sport and understanding where it came from where it began to where it is now, would have a certain degree of understanding of what I'm saying and how it makes sense. Now, before I go on, because this year is a hell of a year, and it's going to be a hell of a year still. And this is coming off of COVID. Last year we had COVID. We had COVID in 2020, and in the beginning and the ending of 2019, we also had COVID problem, right? So this is coming off of COVID. We are having these kinds of. We are spoiled by these matchups. So this is Canelo versus Bivol. Okay, this is just Canelo versus Bivol. This is a fight that happens next month, May 7th. We haven't even talked about this month. Okay, what's coming up next? All right, we're gonna talk about that. What you need in the building. So if you like this channel and you like what this channel be saying, and you guys know this is about boxing, hit the subscribe button. If you guys